I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Sylvette, not Tara, would you please conduct a roll call?
Yes, sir. Brian Dames. Mike Dowd. Here. Frank Facciano.
Here.
Don Gottschall.
Present.
Justin Grimshaw.
Here.
John Hayes.
Here.
Ron Heckman. Larry Hemberger. James Irwin.
Here.
Jeff Matskin.
Here.
Glenn Reedman.
Present.
Mike Stershik.
Here.
Matt Turk.
I'm here.
Chris Worley. Tara Zirinsky. Here. Okay, we have a quorum.
Excellent. Do we have any public comment?
We do not, sir.
Very good. I trust everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes of our June 29th meeting. Remember, we did not have a meeting in July, so we have no minutes from last month. But if there's no additions or changes to the minutes, I'd ask for a motion to approve the June 29th minutes. Thank you, Glenn Reedman. Got a second from Tara. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Minutes are approved. We're going to do some reports here, which will require some actions. We're going to start. Brian, you're here, correct?
He's not on.
He's not on. Okay. We will. I guess I'll ask for Todd to present the treasurer's report.
And Matt, if I could, before Todd starts, I have to leave at 12:45. I have to testify at 1:30 in that matter that I told you about earlier.
Yep.
So if we could.
We're going to move that executive session to just before the director's report.
Great.
So we're going to try to get through our action items quickly and then move on to that.
Perfect, thank you.
Thanks, Todd.
I got to check with Colin, make sure I'm in a good spot. This is a good spot, Colin? We're good. Good afternoon, good to see everybody. We'll go to the treasury report, as Mike said earlier. When we got good news, keep it short and sweet. So, if you haven't heard already, we had the best July on record as far as passenger traffic. We're actually up 3% versus July 2019. Next slide. We had a great month of July. You can see net income of $506K and no cares. Next slide. Year to date, much better than what we expected on budget. We're at 1.5 and change versus a budget number that was expected to be much worse than that. Next. Again, this is really the most important thing to keep in mind. That our budget variances, is what you can see, is 2.7 and 2.8 million actually. Most of that, in fact, 95% of that is related to revenue. So we're not cutting expenses. We are growing our revenue, which is really how we become sustainable and move into the way we wanted things to go. Next slide. This is our cash flow. You can go to the next slide. So many adjustments on there. You can see that we're above our 60-day number by a significant amount, even if you go down to 2019 levels, because as expenses go up, some of these reserves and amounts per day go up, so the actual thresholds go up. We're still, at the end of 6 months, we're at 153 at the highest level. And if you push it all the way out to the end of 2022, which is what I usually do, it's usually year and a half, we are above the 60-day threshold, including contingencies and everything else. So again, we're on track. You see these things in yellow, and that's really a reflection of changes remain. I'm not moving, Colin. I see you watching me. But the contingency in the yellows there, those are going up because of the increased expenditures. The same thing with the required bond cash reserve. And I think that's it. Any?
Todd, on that on line 20,
Go back.
what's the reason for the spike in CapEx in December?
That's this timing. Some of that is related to, is this timing with the no, it's more of the runway.
Oh, okay.
You know, the runway, because we have the closures. So the closures we have next month, but you'll see a lot of that stuff in November and December when we're going to actually have to pay. A lot of that is related to the runway.
Okay.
There's reimbursements
Coming
made
a month
in
before.
the months after that.
And you can see some of the spikes where we get the actual, because you can see that's a net number, but you can see the receipts. Like if you look here, in November, you can see we're getting 9.6 million. So it's just the timing.
It's all time, yeah.
Any other questions? Again, Mike pointed out earlier, if it's good news, keep it short and sweet, and everybody's happy. That work for you too, Frank? Okay.
Well, without Brian here, and without any other questions, I'd ask for a motion to accept the June and July. Thank you, Glenn, and I got the second from Mike, and all in favor of accepting the report, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the report is accepted, and Frank, do you want to do the official introduction?
Turn it over to Todd to present the finance report.
If you remember, and I'm going to walk through this relatively quickly for people that weren't here when we did our budget last year. But we actually, when we did our budget last year, we broke it into two pieces. First half based on how conditions were, and then kind of a second half because we were optimistic, hopefully optimistic that things will be better. So this is that second half, and this is kind of what we always thought. We always talk with those three. But it's really that third one where we talk about managing expectations. Because you remember when we approved our budget, it was November of 2020, and you remember how things were then. Even our first quarter this year was probably the worst first quarter we've had in 50 years. Second quarter was pretty good, but the first quarter was not. So things have ramped up and improved, and we can make adjustments accordingly. Next slide. And this is just kind of running through again, reminding us that we were going to make adjustments in the second half, just reminding us of the process that we went through, make sure we cover everything that's important, safety, debt service, but again, emphasizing that second half. Next slide. Balanced budget, again, this is really important, 60 to 65% of the 2019 revenue numbers. You saw when I said earlier how revenue was up. This is our opportunity to kind of adjust things based on where we think we are right now. Next slide. We did the earlier amendment that we did in April, which is basically we accepted that at 298 additional top-off funds for CARES, and we used it for expenses. We rebalanced our bad debt because of the additional CARES, and we basically used it for personnel and other operating expenses. So again, it didn't have any change in the net income, but we used that money as we got it. Next slide. This is the first half results. So the first half results is 1.1 million of actual. You can see what our budget was, a big variance there. We expected a negative 1.1. So what we're going to do here is we're going to basically say the first half, we're going to lock that in. So that's the first half. And then the second half, we actually had a budget for the second half, and we'll talk about that. So the second half budget, and normally we talk about a whole year's budget, but we have a first half, we actually have a monthly budget. We don't show all that, it's a lot of detail. But the first half actual is the actual. That's what it's going to be. The second half is what we had budgeted, and these are the adjustments to that second half, and the ones in yellow. And the overall change is 1.3, which gives us a revised revenue of, call it 3.1 million, up significantly from our 427 budget. Next slide. And again, we've added the extra revenue, but we're going to spend it because, as everybody else is aware of, personnel costs, everything, all those challenges we're dealing with at an increased level, we have to deal with. So that's why the biggest adjustment there is in personnel, and then all the other costs that kind of go along with that. Next slide. Again, we're spending that 1.3, and it works out to a net. But the biggest thing is, if you really look at it from a macro level, we originally, remember our exciting net income that we had for our budget of 2020, which was 68,000, whopping number. I must tell you, I had to tell the banks that number, and they thought I was joking with them. 68,000 for the whole year? I'm like, yes, that was a number. So we're showing a new number of $2.4 million, which is a more realistic number based on our revenue. And again, keep in mind that that includes CARES. So, again, CARES is a big reason, but still, it's a much better improvement from where we thought we were. And most of that money we're going to use for personnel and all the things that we need to do at this point in time. Next slide. And this is on the capital side. Again, we're going to make some adjustments. Now, we're not talking about the big items, the connector and the runway. We're talking about what we call departmental, those smaller things that we have to make adjustments for during the year based on operations. So you have, this is what was budgeted, these are things that we already did. These are things that were unbudgeted, but we had to do just because, you know, we had the cough cards. Some of these other things just based on activity that we have to kind of deal with. You see that? And then we only spent 323 for the first half of the year, and the whole budget for the whole year was 1.2 million and change for other departmental capital assets. Not the big boys, these are the small. And then you see here what we have budgeted for kind of the second half. That's already budgeted. We're going to spend that. This is the things that we have to add in there we think are critical. And that's a 1.8 number. And I think it's an overall adjustment of 877,000 addition that we're adding to the, what we call departmental capital assets. Next slide. Again, this is kind of summarizing them. 213, all the way down to here. This is 2.1, that we have a revised capital for departmental. This is our original 877 variance. Again, we've adjusted for all that in our cash flow. And the biggest item on here is some purchases that we'll talk about later for properties. But again, we think it's something that the board should approve, and it helps us move forward in a positive way. Any questions?
Well done.
And this was approved by this was forwarded by the Finance Committee already. We took a deeper dive into those numbers. Gave Todd a little more time to thrill us with his spreadsheets. Okay, and we got a second from Tara. All in favor of approving the budget amendments as presented by Todd, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, they are approved. I'm going to hold the executive committee for a minute. I'm going to ask that we enter into executive session to accommodate John's schedule to get his thoughts, which are going to be important for this executive session. If you want to,
I request an executive session to discuss the pending litigation matter involving the matter now before the Commonwealth Court relating to a bid protest on the Terminal Connector project.
Thank you, Judge.
On the record.
And to that end, John, I believe you were going to provide.
I move to accept the legal settlement as presented and authorize the executive director and the solicitor to execute and deliver all documents and undertake such acts as are necessary to comply with the terms of the settlement.
Do we have a second? Frank, thank you. All in favor of the motion as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you, John.
Yeah, and thanks everyone for accommodating me. And Justin, I couldn't agree with you more. You said a lot better than I did.
Thanks, John. We'll move on with our agenda. Moving into the executive committee, we have two items for approval that were approved by the executive committee. I think Darren is going to describe both of them for us.
Absolutely, thank you, sir. So first one, both these we've been working on for a little while now, but the first one is our ground lease with Air Products for them to allow them to construct a new hangar for the aircraft. We have documents pretty much finalized now. I think we're still working out a couple of pieces of language, so there will be a final review by the solicitor when it's all done. But it's about a 4.8 acre parcel, 29-year lease, which commences on the effective date of the lease. So basically when they get their certificate of occupancy. They have 12 months to get permits, and then another 4 months to start construction, and 24 months from there to actually finish construction. So we'll start seeing revenue from this hangar in, we'll say, 24 to 36 months, and that's somewhere in that time frame by the time they're done permitting and everything. So yeah, certainly answer any questions. We went into a little more detail in committee, but I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Any questions for Darren? I'd make the comment before we jump to there that I was lucky. I drove past the Air Products new headquarters a couple days ago. It's a massive, but a very beautiful project. I'm looking forward to Air Products continuing to do the good work and construction here in the Lehigh Valley on our facility. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be a good-looking building.
Yeah, we're definitely excited about it.
For our facility. So I've got a motion from Mike. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Tara. All in favor of approving the ground lease as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. Okay, approved. Thank you. And the next one.
So the next one, I've been working on this one for a little while longer than the Air Products one even. I think some of you have been here the whole time, but I think most of you board members weren't here at the beginning of this. But excited that we've kind of pushed this one to the finish line as well. So incredibly important project for the authority here. It's a little over 300-acre development in Hanover Township, Northampton County. It's basically, we're asking for approval of the ground lease option agreement, which is a 5-year term with up to 3 5-year renewals based on some milestones. So basically, they have to be making progress to get the renewals. Ultimately, this will go down in several different ground leases as they take down properties. It'll be a new ground lease. Revenue is all split 60-40, 60 Majestic, 42 us. There's a whole revenue calculation formula in the agreements as well. These have been heavily vetted by our legal team as well, both the Solicitor's Office and our Aviation Council. So asking for approval for these, again, dependent on the final review of council and everything as we clean these all up. There's several, started working today with Majestic on several exhibits and things that have to be put together to get these in final form. But so looking for that approval and certainly happy again to answer any questions.
First, raise your hand if you were here on the board in December of 2017 when we first, nobody? I was. It's been a long time.
You and Mike Dowd, I think, might be.
Yeah, it might be it.
I've been here for the duration.
Yeah, it's been a long process, but I'm thrilled to see us moving to this point. Glenn, it looks like you were moving to approve the green lights. Did you have a question?
No, it was.
You got the motion? All right, I'm gonna give it to Glenn. Thank you, Frank. All in favor of approving our ground lease option agreement with Majestic, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Darren, appreciate it. We will, yeah, that is. Serious credit, I mean, tremendous, there were times where, I won't even get into details, we can.
Let's not.
We can get into details of how good this
Signals for
feels.
the groundbreaking or something.
Yeah, we'll save it for the groundbreaking. Tom, do you want to provide a director's report?
Sure,
Thank you.
sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we talked about earlier, great July, best on record, actually 3% over our July 2019, our former record. So 97,000 passengers through ABE this past month. Just taking a look at August and trying to see what happened there. Nationally, TSA was up about 167% nationally over August of last year, no surprise, but down about 22.5% from August of 19. In terms of our numbers versus national averages, we were up 200% versus last August and only down 11.5%. A lot of that, I think, is also attributable to airline seats in our market for August, down also about 12% from 2019. So seats down a little bit, again, passengers down just a little bit, and we expect to see sort of that follow through. Since our last board meeting, which again was June 29th, so it's been a little bit, we've been in front of you, so we'll tell you a little bit about July and August quickly here. On July 1st, U.S. Congresswoman Susan Wild visited ABE for a tour of some infrastructure projects, and we were out on the airfield looking at the runway project. July 4th through the 15th, we had a TSA pre-check event at ABE. 612 people registered at that event, which is great, over the typical 500 appointment slots. So next pre-check event will be in October, so we'll have more details on that following. July 13th, we did host Miller Keystone Blood Drive. So that's, again, another event. We've been partnering with Miller Keystone on a number of blood drives here. July 21st, we celebrated National Hot Dog Day. And we distributed nearly 600 hot dogs to our passengers, so that was kind of fun. And then July 28th, President Biden arrived at ABE on Air Force One during his visit to the Lehigh Valley. So
Just a routine.
it's getting to be a routine. Another visit by Air Force One. So thanks to all the team for getting that handled very smoothly. Speaking of handling operationally things very smoothly, August 9th through the 11th, FAA inspectors were here for our annual Part 139 airport compliance inspection. And now for the third time in 4 years, and the third time in history, our airport received a perfect inspection. So thank you to Steve Connor. Excellent job. August 16th, 6 ABC out of Philadelphia was here to do a little story on our COPE program. I don't know, was Sherman available? Yeah, Sherman was involved. Yes, of course. I'm director and producer, probably Sherman. So thanks everybody for the story there. I think great story about our therapy dog program here at ABE. And then August 24th, Hanover Township, Lehigh County had their community night, and we did participate, a number of staff from LNAA, as well as our canine unit. Canine Mickey was there and participated as well. So in terms of upcoming events, we have our annual emergency plan tabletop exercise. That's being held on September 18th from 8 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. So we've got that scheduled. Meeting will be here at the main terminal to start. September 19th at Braden Air Park, we've got the Equilibrium Polo match. So gates open at 11. The match starts at 1 p.m. And I think members still have until tomorrow to reserve tickets if they're interested in tickets. You can see Sylvette for those. The other big event, which we talked a little bit about in our committee discussion and our updates on projects, is dual runway closures, effectively shutting down our airfield for the runway project. We've got two closures. One is 72 hours and the other is 54 hours. So 72-hour closure takes place on September 17th through September 19th. That's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then the second closure, the 54 hours, is September 28th through Thursday morning on September 30th. So again, no airline flights, no air cargo flights, no scheduled activity of any kind, no fixed wing activity. The only thing that might be operating in and out of the airport during those times is helicopters. So we can get a hold of Ted if he's interested. But the other one, I think just to remind everybody, we were anticipating some relief perhaps on masks and the ability to not have masks in the airport facilities in September. TSA did extend that deadline, and now that pushes us out to January 18th. So we know at least through January 18th, masks will be required in all the areas of the terminal and other spaces for all of our facilities. So again, just a reminder. And I think that concludes my report, so happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chair.
Any questions for Tom? Thank you, Tom. Anything to report, Judge?
I covered what I had to during the executive session.
Very good. If there's no other new business for the authority, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Mike, and I'll give Glenn a second.
And
Thanks,
next month, we meet at 5 o'clock.
Thanks, good point. We're gonna be here at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, 5
for
o'clock.